Chapter 12. Declaration.
Why is your girlfriend so stubborn?
Alice cast a quick, indignant glare in my direction, as if I had any say in whether or not Bella's graduation party would go on as planned. I had already told her this was Bella's decision, and I was staying out of it.
You can't be serious, Bella argued. You've completely lost your mind. Say whatever you like to me, Alice said stubbornly. The party is still on.
I kicked Alice under the table, but she didn't so much as bat an eye at me, and she called Bella stubborn.
Calm down, Bella. There's no reason not to go through with it. Besides, the invitations are already sent.
But insane, Bella stuttered. If it was really causing her this much anxiety, I would just take her out of town for the evening. Alice could throw her party. It didn't mean Bella had to show up.
You most certainly will not,
Alice silently spat the moment I started to form a coherent plan. It was one of the many downfalls of having a sister who can see your every move, long before you've even had a chance to make it.
You've already bought my present,
Alice said angelically, trying to change the subject.
You don't have to do anything but show up.
I listened as Bella took several deep, calming breaths. As I watched, I realized that saving her from a party she had no interest in attending was only part of the reason I wanted to escape with her for a while. We had both spent far too much of our time lately worrying over the state of things in Seattle, and whoever had been in her room, not to mention a possible visit from the Volture, with so much going on around us, we had hardly had any time to focus on simply being together. We still had our nights, but even those were tainted to some degree by the fear I could tell Bella was still feeling. She tried to hide it from me, but I couldn't ignore the way she jumped every time there was a noise outside of her window, and while I enjoyed how tightly she held on to me as she drifted off to sleep, I knew it was as much out of the need for comfort and protection as it was a gesture of love. Under normal circumstances, it would have been so easy to whisk her away, even if only for the day, to somewhere where we could just be together and in love. Right now, however, there were too many uncertainties, too much we didn't know and understand.
With everything going on right now, a party is hardly appropriate,
Bella insisted, eliciting an eye roll from Alice.
Graduation is what's going on right now, and a party is so appropriate it's almost passé.
Alice, she cried, exasperated.
There are a few things we need to get in order now, and that's going to take a little time, she continued, unfazed. As long as we're sitting here waiting, we might as well commemorate the good stuff. You're only going to graduate from high school, for the first time, once. You don't get to be human again, Bella. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot.
I shot a glare in her direction, even though I could hear that no one around us was interested in our conversation. Most of our classmates had given up long ago trying to figure out the mysteries of the Cullens. With Bella around, Alice and I had lost our intrigue.
What few things do we need to get in order?
Bella asked, determined to know everything despite my continued assurance that we had things under control. The less she worried about, the less my conscience bothered me for having dragged her into yet another situation she never would have been a part of. Jasper thinks we could use some help, I explained gently, hiding the concern in my voice of what would happen if we ended up going into this fight alone. Tanya's family isn't the only choice we have. Carlisle's trying to track down a few old friends, and Jasper is looking up Peter and Charlotte. He's considering talking to Maria, but no one really wants to involve the Southerners.
That's putting it mildly,
Alice thought, visibly shaken for a split second before regaining her composure. For her, it was more than just an aversion to asking for help from a coven so violent in nature. If Maria was involved, Alice would be forced to confront Jasper's past in a way she had never had to before. She had always been grateful that she saw the future rather than the past, deciding it was easier not to have a visual to go with the stories she had long ago accepted. Having a face to go with Jasper's stories was not something Alice was prepared for. It shouldn't be hard to convince them to help, I said, hoping between Carlisle's friends and Peter and Charlotte we would have more than enough assistance. Nobody wants a visit from Italy, I added quietly, hating the way Bella flinched at the word.
But these friends,
They're not going to be vegetarians, right? She asked nervously. No, I admitted. Here? In Forks? She asked frantically. I wanted to assure her that they wouldn't pose a threat to her, that if we explained our unique situation, they would curb their appetite, or at least keep their hunting activities far away. How could I promise such a thing, though, when all I wanted was to run Bella out of town the moment they arrived? Of course, I could never leave my family right as the fight was about to begin. How could I? I was instantly bombarded with images of red-eyed, hungry vampires mere feet away from my Bella, and I knew that if it meant her protection, I would have to leave without a second thought. My family would understand. They would have to.
They're friends,
Alice said, either sensing my anxiety or seeing what I had barely begun to plan.
Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry.
She was speaking to Bella, but every thought was directed at me.
Anyone who is willing to fight with us will respect us enough not to hurt Bella. She'll be fine. No one is getting near her. Edward, we need you with us. You have to understand what advantage we'd be giving up if you left.
And I did understand. With newborns, Alice's power meant nothing. She wouldn't see anything, because they wouldn't be deciding anything. They would be fighting on pure instinct, but I would still hear them coming.
And then Jasper has to teach us a few courses on newborn elimination,
Alice continued, sounding somewhat more relaxed when she knew I wasn't going anywhere. I smiled, despite my apprehension, caught up for a moment in the thought of learning fighting techniques from Jasper. I had been listening to him ever since the day we realized what we were up against. His excitement was undeniable. He was anxious to finally put his skills and knowledge to good use. From his dark past, he could bring us something indispensable, an advantage no one else could offer. In his mind, it was almost an atonement for the things he could not change and would always regret. We were all eager to learn. Everyone, that is, except Carlyle. My family knew this fight was going to be difficult for him, but only I truly knew the toll it was taking on him. I'll do whatever is necessary to protect my family. He recited it over and over in his mind, his own personal mantra, his constant reminder that, although it went against everything in his very nature, sometimes violence was the only answer.
When are you going?
I heard Bella ask, though my attention was, admittedly, elsewhere. A week. That ought to give us enough time.
You look kind of green, Bella,
Alice said.
Focus, Edward. She's a nervous wreck.
I quickly pulled Bella close to me, banishing every thought but those of her. Alice was right. She needed comfort right now, and I had been doing a poor job of giving it to her. It's going to be fine, Bella. Trust me. She sank into me disparagingly until some hidden thought changed her posture.
You're looking for help,
she said softly, contemplatively. If it weren't for the strange, underlying knowledge that she was about to suggest something I wouldn't like, I might have laughed. Who could she have thought of that we hadn't?
Yes?
Alice hedged, clearly as baffled as me. I could help, she whispered. I felt my grip tighten protectively around her. No, it's too soon. My thoughts raged through me, but thankfully Alice remained the voice of reason.
Oh, calm down. We wouldn't dare. No good is going to come from throwing another newborn into the mix. That really wouldn't be helpful,
she said gently.
Why not?
Bella asked stubbornly.
8 is better than 7. There's more than enough time. If she's delusional enough to think she'd be any help to us as a 4-day-old vampire, then clearly you haven't done a good job preparing her for what's to come,
Alice silently reprimanded. With a pang of guilt, I knew she was right. Everyone kept telling me that the more prepared Bella was, the easier it would be on her. Yet I couldn't bring myself to go into excruciating details. Maybe I was still trying to deceive myself. If I didn't talk about her being changed, then it didn't seem real. Nothing was final until the venom was coursing through her veins.
There's not enough time to make you helpful, Bella,
Alice continued calmly, saying things I didn't have the courage to.
Do you remember how Jasper described the young ones? You'd be no good in a fight. You wouldn't be able to control your instincts, and that would make you an easy target, and then Edward would get hurt trying to protect you.
I watched Bella's expression return to frustration as Alice smiled angelically at her. "Not because you're afraid," I reminded her softly, happy when she relaxed into me once again.
"Oh,"
Alice said, irritation creeping into her tone.
"I hate last-minute cancellation, so that puts the party attendance list down to 65.
65? Bella shrieked. "Who canceled?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light.
"Renee.
What?"
She was going to surprise you for graduation, but something went wrong. You'll have a message when you get home."
Bella sighed, her heart rate coming back down as she let herself rest against me again. She was relieved that Alice had dropped the subject of the party, at least for the day, though I was certain it was still weighing heavily on her mind. She was quiet on the drive home, but her mood grew perceptibly lighter when she listened to her mother's voice on the answering machine. It really was a shame she couldn't make it to the party. It was obvious how much Bella missed her. When Renee's message ended mid-sentence, Bella sighed.
"Well, that's one.
"One what?"
"One person I don't have to worry about getting killed this week."
I rolled my eyes to mask my guilt. Even though she missed her mother, with a countless number of new vampires possibly visiting town in the near future, this was the last place Bella wanted anyone she loved. Once again, I hated myself for inflicting the horror and realities of my world on her. Because of me, she was afraid of having her own mother come to her graduation.
"Why won't you and Alice take this seriously?"
she asked, exasperated.
"This is serious."
"Confidence," I said with a smile, trying to brighten her mood again.
"Wonderful."
Frustrated, she turned away from me and picked up the phone to call her mother. It was a welcome break from the stressful day, listening to her talk to Renee. Or rather, listening to Renee talk while Bella occasionally interjected quick words of reassurance that she wasn't upset about her missing graduation. Every once in a while, Bella would look up at me apologetically, but I just smiled and ran my fingers through her hair, secretly loving the way it still made her heart race. As I listened, I caught myself wondering what Renee would say if Bella called her one day, telling her that she and I were engaged. Would she be happy for Bella, or would she warn her not to make the same mistake she had, getting married so young? And even if she had her doubts, would she at least be able to accept me as the man who loved her daughter? Someone who will always protect Bella no matter what? Strangely, it felt nice to worry about something so normal. In this one thing, at least, I was like every other man who contemplated the future with the woman he loves. When she finally hung up the phone, she didn't waste any time closing the distance between us. She stretched up toward me until her lips met mine, and I lifted her onto the counter, too eager to be closer to her. Her arms and legs quickly wrapped around me, and for a few moments I allowed myself to simply revel in the warmth of her touch and the feeling of her fingers in my hair. The way she sighed when she sunk into me made me ache to hold her tighter, which, unfortunately, meant I needed to do the exact opposite. I laughed at her sulky expression as I pulled away, happy that she never seemed to tire of my embrace. We were talking about eternity after all, and my greatest hope was that she would always look at me with the same eyes of never-ending love, the way I knew I would always look upon her. I relaxed at her side, putting my arm around her shoulder so she would rest into me. "I know you think I have some kind of perfect, unyielding self-control, but that's not actually the case."
"I wish,"
she muttered, always so ready to push me beyond what was advisable. It was odd to think that not long ago my biggest fear was not being able to control my thirst. If someone had told me that any desire existed more powerful than that one, I wouldn't have believed them. Lately, however, the burn was second to the all-consuming need to hold her tighter, never let go. Knowing her human days were numbered should have granted me some patience. Soon, my strength would no longer threaten her safety, yet somehow, knowing I only had a short time to caress her warm skin, breathe in her scent that had always been both pleasure and pain, it was agony to not let myself revel in every aspect of her humanity without restraint. My muscles twitched to pull her back into me, let her wrap her arms and legs around me again. So with a deep breath to summon my willpower, I changed the subject to a safer topic. "After school tomorrow, I'm going hunting with Carlisle, Esme, and Rosalie, just for a few hours. We'll stay close. Alice, Jasper, and Emmett should be able to keep you safe." I added, as much for her assurance as mine. So nervous about leaving Bella's side for even a short time, Carlyle had had to remind me of the importance of keeping myself strong. It was necessary for the things that were to come. She groaned.
I hate being babysat.
It's temporary.
Jasper will be bored. Emmett will make fun of me.
They'll be on their best behavior.
Right.
I felt guilty, and momentarily considered not going away at all. I had spoken with Alice after the last time I had left, and made her promise things would be different this time. But of course, there were no guarantees. Don't let her sulk the whole time I'm away, I pleaded. She loves you, Alice. You can keep her distracted. You just have to make sure you're acting the part of the sister and friend, rather than innkeeper. I was about to offer to stay, when Bella's eyes brightened.
You know, she said slowly, I haven't been to La Push since the bonfire.
It took every ounce of strength in me to keep my expression neutral. There really wasn't a reason I could give her not to go. Well, not one that didn't make me sound petty, irrational, and jealous.
I'd be safe enough there,
she said sincerely. My mind was screaming at me. No, stay here with me. I don't really need to go, really. You're probably right, I said calmly, hoping my true feelings were disguised. The last thing I wanted was to get into another argument with her. We'd been down that path too many times. She was safe in La Push, like she had said. I had to put my prejudice about the wolves aside. She smiled up at me, gently brushing her fingers below my eyes.
Are you thirsty already?
She asked, scrutinizing my face. It would never cease to amaze me how easily she spoke of my deplorable thirst, how calm she was discussing the things that I had once been so afraid to talk to her about. I should have known that she was always watching for signs of my thirst, and that she would question this particular trip. Bella didn't like to see my eyes get too shadowy, or my irises too black. She worried about me in ways I'd never deserve, and although it would have been easy to answer, yes, I'm thirsty, because I owed her everything, I could only speak the truth. I didn't show the usual signs, because this hunting trip had a far different purpose. Not really, I said, wishing I could leave it at that, but knowing her inquisitive nature wouldn't let me. We want to be as strong as possible. We'll probably hunt again on the way, looking for big game. I hesitated to tell her because I assumed it would only worry her to know we were taking extra precautions. She surprised me again when she simply asked,
That makes you stronger?
I watched her expression closely for any signs that she was putting up a brave front, but there was nothing there but genuine curiosity. Yes, I answered, when I was sure hearing about our extra hunting plans wouldn't cause her unnecessary stress. Human blood makes us strongest, though only fractionally. Jasper has been thinking about cheating, adverse as he is to the idea. He's nothing if not practical, but he wouldn't suggest it. He knows what Carlyle would say. Even though I was sure Alice was watching his decisions closely, I had been listening to his thoughts as well, ever since the idea had first occurred to him. I had been nervous in the beginning, but as soon as I realized that, while Jasper felt guilty for even thinking about killing a human, his true reason for not suggesting it was less about Carlyle's reaction and more about his own fears. He was terrified that if he tasted human blood again, it would ruin all the progress he had made during his years with us. He thrived on the fact that every day he abstained, his memory of the exact flavor, the level of satisfaction it granted, faded minutely. Changing his diet had been torturous for him, and he was not willing to go through the withdrawal again. I looked at Bella then, having suddenly realized what I had said. How foolish of me, mentioning that something so terrible had even occurred to Jasper. Now I had given her one more reason to worry. I was about to apologize, when she surprised me by asking,
Would that help?
My jaw nearly dropped. Did she have any idea what she was suggesting? It doesn't matter, I said quickly. We aren't going to change who we are. A pained expression flashed across her face, and I quickly moved on, unwilling to let her dwell on the subject. There was no point. It wasn't something we would ever consider, no matter how many newborns we were up against. That's why they're so strong, of course, I explained. The newborns are full of blood, their own blood, reacting to the change. It lingers in the tissues and strengthens them. Their bodies are using it up slowly. Like Jasper said, the strength starting to wane after about a year.
How strong will I be?
She asked with a grin. Then something remarkable occurred. Hearing her excitement, seeing the light in her eyes, made me excited about what her life would soon be like. For that one moment, I didn't feel any fear or regret for what she was losing. All I felt was happiness, and maybe even a touch of pride at Bella's ability to always focus on the positive. "Stronger than me," I answered, barely able to contain my sudden euphoria. I would finally be able to hold her, kiss her the way I'd always wanted to, the way she deserved. I could shower her with my endless affection without holding back.
"Stronger than Emmett?"
she asked, and my grin widened. Bella was going to be extraordinary, and I couldn't wait to see it. "Yes," I promised. "Do me a favor, and challenge him to an arm wrestling match. It would be a good experience for him." She laughed, probably in disbelief, which would make it that much more entertaining when she crushed him. A moment later, she stepped down from the counter, still smiling and shaking her head, and insisted that we get to studying. This was the last set of high school exams she would ever take, and we both wanted her to do well. I let my mind wander while she pored over the books, answering any questions she had idly as my thoughts drifted to the future ahead. Unfortunately, there was one detail that remained missing from what would otherwise be a perfect vision. Bella still didn't seem any closer to accepting my proposal. Not that I had actually asked again. It seemed a paradox that we could so easily proclaim our love for each other every day, yet we couldn't discuss marriage. Bella was completely opposed to the idea, making it very difficult for me to plan a proper proposal, yet I knew the time was running short. If she wanted me to be the one to change her, and truth be told, I wanted to be the one as well, then she needed to get over her fears, the way I had slowly learned to push aside my trepidation about her giving up her mortality.
"Do you mind if I give Jacob a call?"
she asked, pushing her calculus book aside.
"I should make sure it's all right for me to come over tomorrow."
I was positive it would be more than all right with him, but I smiled and nodded anyway. She kept the conversation short, and I waited patiently, passing the time by running my fingers through her silky hair again. Of course Jacob was thrilled he would be spending the day with Bella.
"Leave it alone, Jake," she said quietly. "Just tell me what time I can come over."
"You can come over yesterday as far as I'm concerned," he teased. "You know you're always welcome. School's out for us anyway, so come over as soon as you can."
"Okay, I'll be over right after school."
Bella smiled at me as she hung up the phone and motioned to her textbooks.
"Shall we?"
she said, obviously not wanting to talk about Jacob or La Push, which was fine with me. The less I thought about it, the less crazy I would make myself. The next day at school, I listened to the thoughts of Bella's classmates, as well as a few of her teachers. Being that they were senior year finals and really had no effect on what anyone was doing after high school, it didn't surprise me to find Bella was far more prepared than the rest of her graduating class. When our final class was over, the reality of where I was leaving her during my brief time away set in. I forced a smile onto my face, remembering that she was, in fact, well protected by the wolves. Beyond Jacob's obnoxious affection toward her, the rest of the pack seemed to care about her too, although they all thought she was a lunatic for keeping company with vampires. "Would you like to spend a couple hours together before I leave, or should I drop you off right away?" She rolled her eyes and let out a deep sigh. I knew it made her feel like a child, being escorted to the boundary line, and perhaps I was being selfish, but I wanted to spend as long with her as I could. Besides, it was reassuring, if not somewhat annoying, to listen to Jacob's thoughts when he picked her up. He was almost as preoccupied with her safety as I was.
"I guess we might as well go now," she said dejectedly. "The sooner you leave, the sooner you can come home, right?"
I put my arm around her and kissed the top of her head. I knew she was looking forward to visiting Jacob, and maybe it had only been for my benefit, but those few simple words had changed my whole outlook on the day. She called Jacob to let him know we were on our way, her fingers intertwined with mine as she spoke. I drove slower than usual, wanting to hang on just a little bit longer. I was glad today's hunting trip would be a short one. So how do you think you did on your exams? I asked, gently tracing the back of her hand and staring into her eyes. I was glad it no longer bothered her that I seldom watched the road when I drove.
History was easy, but I don't know about calculus. It seemed like it was making sense, so that probably means I failed.
I laughed. If she had any idea, her teacher had purposely made the test easier than usual, having expected a low amount of preparation and concentration from his students. I'm sure you did fine, or if you're really worried, I could bribe Mr. Vardner to give you an A. She smiled nervously, probably wondering whether or not I was serious.
Thanks, but no thanks.
I was enjoying the light-hearted conversation. It felt like forever since we had talked about such mundane things. With everything going on, it was nice for once to not be discussing the newborns, or Victoria, or the Volture. Unfortunately, our peaceful moment together was quickly coming to an end.
I'll just tell her. That's all I can do. I mean, I have to, right? Would never forgive myself if I let her turn into a disgusting bloodsucker without knowing she had another option. A better option.
I saw Jacob before he saw us, and I couldn't hide the scowl on my face as I noticed the determination of his thoughts was mirrored by his expression. He was drumming his fingers nervously on the steering wheel, but nothing was going to stop him from telling Bella how he felt. Honestly, I was surprised it had taken him this long. Her approaching graduation date must be looming over his head every bit as it was looming over mine.
What's wrong?
Bella asked, noticing my expression. Nothing, I said quietly.
Think of Charlie. Think of your friends. With me, you wouldn't have to give up anything. I love you, Bella. Choose me. You're not listening to Jacob, are you? She asked disapprovingly.
It's not easy to ignore someone who's shouting.
Oh.
Jacob's rant ended abruptly when he noticed us, though of course he knew I had heard him. So you up for a little competition, Leech? Or are you going to turn the car around and hold her hostage again? I bit back a growl.
What's he shouting?
Bella asked. I'm absolutely certain he'll mention it himself. Just then, Jacob honked his horn impatiently. That's impolite, I said, foot twitching above the gas pedal. I didn't really need to go hunting today.
That's Jacob,
Bella muttered, getting out of the car before I could change my mind about leaving her there. I'll give you a call when she wants to come home. Or should I say, if she wants to come home, he added with a smirk. I glared at him as Bella got into his car. My short trip suddenly felt much longer. Then again, when I had planned it, I didn't realize that while I was away, Jacob was going to be declaring his love to my Bella.